with a war going on in Ukraine and so much calamities happening around the world, and a world that is just recovering from the troubles of COVID 19. There is so much sorrow, so much sadness in the world. But today, we want to hear how we can overcome the sadness, how we can find joy in the midst of the sorrow and in the midst of the sadness. Welcome to the program, Motivational Monday Live Show, with me, your host, The Prince. And today we are having a great guest all the way from the United States of America. He is already in the studio and he's going to share with us today. Let's make welcome Jeremy Mac.
Thank you, Prince. I really appreciate you having me on the show, and excited about talking to you today. And we definitely do have a lot going on in the world right now, don't we? I mean, there's just a lot of things for people to be sad about, but there's also a lot of things for us to be joyful about. So that's, I think, what we have to focus on. So.
Yeah, so as we begin the program, I want to begin by asking you to introduce yourself, to say a little about yourself and what you are doing and all of that. Let's my audience get to know you.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Jeremy McDonald, and I'm the author of a book called Peace Be Still. And I have a coaching and healing practice called the Storytelling Alchemist, which is basically about changing your inner story and alchemizing your thoughts and your inner life. So by doing our spiritual inner work that every spiritual text in the world talks about, you have to do that inner work, right? So that's kind of what I help people focus in on and focus in on what's going on in their inner world. I always say if you change the war inside, then the war on the outside will start to change as well. So that's where it starts. So I believe we were taught, and I was raised Christian, that to become more Christ-like, right? And that's our mission here in the world.
Okay. So today we are talking about how to find joy in a world of sorrow, in a world of sadness. When we say that the world is filled with sorrow and sadness, Jeremy, is it true? Is it true for me to say that?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of people. I mean, I work with a lot of people that are full of anxiety right now. They're scared. I mean, COVID it started to do change to the positive here in the United States, but then and all around the world. But then there's the stuff going on in the Ukraine. There's stuff that going on in Canada just last week or last month with the truckers and the food being moved. So that scares people. I mean, that's the big thing. Where are we going to get our supplies to live? Another thing that's going on in here in the United States is gas prices are going up exponentially, to where we're used to being able to go and move around, but when we're getting up to $7 a gallon of gas, that's substantial for most people. So when the average person here makes about $12 an hour, so that means more than half of an hour's wages is what's costing in some areas for gas. So I think it's to be substantial, but so there is a lot to put a lot of pressure and stress on us, but there's also a lot of things to be joyful of. And I think I want to kind of tell a really quick story. I was just in Honduras about 3 weeks ago, and I had a cab driver driving me around, just kind of showing me the sights and the island of Roatan, Honduras. And he was telling me about, he didn't make a lot of money. He didn't have a lot of means, but he was joyful. He was just the happiest man I've probably ever met, and full of positive energy. And so one of the things he was telling me about is he teaches his children. He actually takes them over into the mainland in Honduras, and they give people food and clothes and blankets and stuff like that. And I said, well, what's your secret to staying happy? He goes, listen, you can't focus in on everything going on in the world. You can only do what you can control. And he says, and being of service is one of the key things that we can do to be happy, which is very true. 16 years ago, I lost everything in my life. And then when I lost everything, I I started being of service. I started helping take care of animals, volunteering at animal shelters. I started helping people that needed help, and it just made me feel better about myself, because we can sit there and we can wallow in ourselves, everything that's going on, or we can actually do something about it in the world. And action creates a change in our perception. Putting the earbuds in. Better?
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Oh, no
You can
worries.
hear me, right?
I can hear you perfectly. Yeah,
Okay,
I was
okay.
just saying, being of service is one of the biggest things that we can do to bring
Being
joy.
what? Being
Being of
what?
being of service to other people is something that we can do to
Okay,
make change.
being of service.
Yes, being of service.
Okay, that is to serve others is
Yes,
one way by which one can find joy in
yes,
this world of sadness and sorrow.
yes, yes. Because a lot of the sadness and sorrow. I mean, the virus that wasn't necessarily this, but a lot of the other things going on in the world is that's crazy. People's selfishness. There's a lot of selfishness and things going on in the ego. But if you change that, you flip that, and you become of service for your own life and your own world, you're going to start changing uh, your perception of sadness in the world. You're going to start finding joy in the world. I just actually went yesterday to a festival called the Chasco Festival. And it's a Native American festival here in the little town I live in Florida. And they were explaining some of their traditions. They were explaining the chicken prairie dance, part of the powwow dancing. And what I found super powerful and interesting about this is that they were talking about the little details, even down to the feathers and the dress that they wear, the clothing that they wear, and that kind of stuff. And they took a lot of pride in doing this. So, and they were teaching their culture. And there was this one part where this man was out dancing, and a little boy dressed in all the feathers and the traditional garb or wear that they would wear, and he said, we teach this to our children at a very young age. So we teach tradition and we teach our culture at a very young age so we don't lose our culture. And so here they are educating people that have nothing to do with their culture. But there you could see how proud they were to share this with us. And that's honestly, in some ways, being of service, because we're sharing culture, and we're sharing and being of service to other people. We're also bringing peace, because there was hundreds and thousands, hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people at this festival. Nobody was angry. Nobody was upset. They were all just a community of people coming together. And that's the other thing. So being of service and bringing community. So one of the things that we do, especially during COVID, we all sat in our houses, and a lot of us watched TV, or we were with our family and stuff like that, but we weren't necessarily a part of our community. And so getting out there in your community and doing something, and being a part of sharing the culture, being a part of sharing your beliefs in a peaceful way, can bring joy to your life as well. Because each one of us has something that we're proud of. Each one of us has something that we can really share and we have a lot of passion for. And so if we share that, that's going to bring a lot of joy in the world as well. Getting out there, and if I call these people armchair activists, people that are on social media and they're complaining about the world. Instead of complaining on social media about what's wrong with the world, why not go out and actually do something about it? If you think there's people starving in the world and it frustrates you, then go out there and help feed people. Bring food out. And to be honest with you, here in the United States especially, we have an excessive amount of stuff. And so we have a lot of blankets and stuff like that, that you could use and help people, and help people bring joy to their lives. And so there's just a lot of things that we can be doing instead of sitting around complaining. And so there's an old saying about we put the amount of effort you put into complaining is the amount of effort that you could be put into actually doing something. And then when you complain about your life, nothing moves. So there's a natural law that says movement creates action. And so if you continue to do something, you'll start to see change in your life. And so, and then the truth is can we do things about, can we do anything about what's going on in Ukraine? Not a lot. We can't do anything. We can't stop the war. We can't go and force governments to stop doing things. But what we can do is what we as individuals can do. Work on ourselves. We're part of our community. We're of service, that kind of stuff. So it'll start bringing joy into your individual lives. And joy, the Prince, I'm sure you'll agree with this, is infectious. Joy is infectious. So if you bring joy and happiness, other people are going to experience joy around you. And I found this in my own life. You know, it's like one of those things that somebody told me a long time ago. They said, if you change your world, internal world, you'll start changing people around. Of course, I was in my early 20s and I thought everybody was crazy. That person was crazy because when we're younger, we never want to listen to people older than us. But then when I started actually practicing it, I started saying, well, I'll give it a try. And so what happened is I started noticing my friends and the people that loved me changing with me. And I thought, well, that's really cool, because instead of me complaining about, we spend a lot of time worrying about what other people are doing instead of worrying about what we're doing. So yeah, there is a lot of here, just looking at that story I was telling you about being in Honduras and watching this man, and he became my teacher in a sense, because I started thinking about all the things we complain about here in the United States. You know, we couldn't even get people to wear a mask during COVID-19. So, and so people were just really angry about it. And I thought, we're kind of spoiled over here. But if we get out and actually do something, if we get out and we have compassion for other people, and what about prayer, by the way? The other thing is what about prayer? What about praying for the people in Ukraine? You know, what about praying for happiness and joy and peace for the rest of the world, and truth for the rest of the world, and compassion? Those things, there's a thing called the Maharaja Effect. I don't know if you ever heard of this, where they've actually taken a group of people and had them meditate on peace, and they've reduced crime in that area by 25%. So that meditation is very similar to prayer. So if we started all praying for peace in this world, I can guarantee you we'll start seeing a change, because this is not even something that's spiritual. This is something that they actually did a controlled study on and showed that focusing in on peace, several people, hundreds and hundreds of people, that actually reduced crime in Washington, D.C. by 25%. And they've done it in more than one city. They've done it in India. They've done it in many other countries and cities. So we know that this is effective. And so, but what do? We keep on complaining. So instead, so what I would say is flip the script, flip it from complaining to actually doing what you can do and focusing on things that you can do. So a lot of joyful things in the world. And there's, you know, the other thing you can do to reduce sadness in your life is get out in nature. You know, get out and be a part of the planet. You know, sit by trees, breathe in oxygen. You know, a lot of times, especially in Western culture, we don't breathe enough. We don't take in enough oxygen. We definitely get stuck in our offices and our homes. We don't necessarily get out and be a part of nature. You know, we're sitting here in our own lives, thinking about our own lives, and no doubt, I mean, there is a lot of things that you know, we have our families and our loved ones and our friends and our people we need to take care of and care about. But does that mean you can't get out and actually change something in the world? Does that mean you can't get out and actually be a part of this world and get out in nature and be a part of nature? No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that you can't do something to change something in your life. No, it doesn't. And you're never too old to actually make a change in your life. So one of the biggest things to bring positivity into the world and into your life is to start changing who you are. So how do you stop complaining? Well, you have to start looking at those complaints and start saying, well, do I feel helpless? Usually when you're complaining, it's something that you can't control. So if you can't control it, there's a book out there that says stop splitting the small stuff in life. And there's also a lot of spiritual texts that says live in the now of the moment. And what that means is that, you know, what is in the future and what is in the past and what is not in your immediate existence, you can't do anything about it. And so, and if there is something you can do about it, then actually get out there and, you know, be a part of it. If it bothers you that much, that means that something in you feels a compassion or a passion for it. And because you're complaining because you feel helpless. And so what you do is you do what you know you can do, and not be helpless. One of the things that I was raised in a church that constantly complained about all the evil in the world. And that's what I was raised in. And so I realized one day, I was like, well, wait a second. I can't do anything about that evil in the world. But what I can do is teach positivity. What I can do is I can pray for peace. What I can do is be of service. What I can do is work on myself and become more peaceful in myself. And so as I've changed my life, I've started to change other people's lives. And guess what? I brought joy into the world, into my own world, in a sad and sorrowful world. And so if we kept on doing this, there's a passage in the Bible that says, 2 or more gather in my name, and then I will be there with you. So all it takes is 2 of us to come together, and we can make a change in this world and actually start making a difference. And I think that's really powerful. And so I challenge you all to get out there and actually do something, with yourself. It starts with you. And there's another principle in Japanese culture that says, healer, heal thyself. So there's a lot of people are out there that they want to make a difference and they want to get out there, change the world. They want to save the planet. And it starts with themselves. And how does it start with themselves? So if you're getting angry inside, there's what's called justified anger, but then actually go out there and start working on yourself in peace. And then when you have to face something, when you have to tell your truth about something, you do it in a peaceful way. I think Martin Luther King was a big teacher of this. He didn't necessarily believe in violence, but he believed in peaceful demonstrations of truth. And because of that, he was an example for us to say that we don't necessarily have to fight physically or even verbally, but we don't have to put up with violence against us either, or oppression. And so those are the things that I think there's a lot of leaders in the world that have taught us this example about, changing with ourselves within, and then using that and acting in the world and making actions in the world. So.
Wow, 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 wow. Thank you so much, Jeremy McDonald. That is so powerful. And thank you for sharing those great information with us today. It's really been a wonderful time listening to you, even though I've been having break off and on because of the network. But the little I've heard, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Now I want to ask you. Um, you very important point saying that for us to be able to find joy in a world of sadness and serve, we need to be of service to others. Okay, now
Yeah.
what do you do when it's to others, but there are against you, either the forces of the environment, the forces of where you are, the forces of poverty, the forces of challenge, the forces of one thing or the other, trying to make sure that you don't serve humanity? What do you do when there is so much against you? Yeah.
That's always going to be there. I mean, it's never going to change. We're always going to have an opposing force against us. There's always going to be, like, I've stood in a group of room and just been positive, and people have been like, you need to stop being so positive. It's driving me crazy. It's a little bit degrading on my nerves. And that's never going to change. There's always going to be somebody that works. There's always going to be a government that works against you. There's always going to be poverty, or not enough money, or not enough resources, that kind of stuff. But think about all the people in the history of mankind that have had those opposing forwards. They still got up every morning. They still realigned themselves. They still try. And so the truth is that I don't care what it is, you're always going to have some opposing force, and it starts within you, by the way. And there's going to be an opposing force within you that's going to say, it's too much work, I have to give up. And so when you look at that, when you start working on that inside of yourself and say, you know what, I realize that I'm afraid, and it takes leaps of faith every time, because there are governments that are going to work against you, but I can guarantee you there's a power and a force in this universe, and some call it God, some people call it spirit, some people call it many different things, but there is something, a force in this universe that is greater than any government could ever imagine. And look at some of the things that have happened in this world. There's been people, freedom fighters in many different countries all over the world that have fought against oppression, imperialism. There's been people, genocide going on in this world. There's always been a force that works against it, and good always wins in the end. Now, let me say that one more time. Good always wins in the end. And there's abundance for all of us. That's not about money. It's about there is abundance for everybody. And so, yes, there's people in the world. I mean, I see homeless people on the street all the time, but there's kindness in the world. And so I see those homeless people and I'll hand them food and stuff like that, because I remember a time when I didn't have very much, where I was suffering. And so there's one of those things where there's always a force that brings in just enough. And I was thinking about the times when I didn't have a whole lot in my life, and there was always just something there that helped me in those moments where I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to keep the electric on. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to have enough food to feed myself, and there was always just something there. And so, so the answer to your question, how do you work against that? It's called faith. There's a faith that we have to have in order to be able to know, and it's a knowing as well, to know that there's always something there. Now, it may not be under the conditions we like. I mean, there's been times where my mother and I lost our house back in 2009. So 13 years ago, we lost our family property to foreclosure to a bank. And this bank wouldn't work with us to help us. But in the end, we found a home. It wasn't ideal, but we found a home. We had food, and we had one of the most important things in the world. We had love. We had a family. We had people that cared about us. And so that's the thing is that in the worst of times, there's always going to be something that comes in to help us. And there's nothing that can overpower God or whatever you pray to, because we have to know that there's a force that helped us at all times. And that's what's really powerful. So to answer your question, I say, how do you work against all those opposing forces like a government and poverty? We start turning to a higher power that's bigger than us. And if we feel alone in the world, that's when really things start working against us. But if we know there's something there working in our favor, I mean, I've heard some crazy stories from people from all over the world where there's like, I wasn't even sure how I was going to eat, but something happened where I at least had the smallest amount of food to sustain life. And then I brought me through that, and those were the hardest times. And now I'm glad I went through that, because now where I'm at is so much different. And so, I mean, these stories you hear them over and over and over again. Well, where does that come from? It comes from something in them just had a faith. There's a force within them that's connected to God that helps it get through it. And so if we don't have that, if we don't know that something's bigger than us helping us, then yeah, we're going to definitely feel alone in this world, especially with everything that's going on. But if we know it's there and we feel it in our heart and soul, then you'll start seeing a change in the world. You'll start seeing a change in yourself, and it'll guide you out. It'll guide you out of darkness into the light. That's a lot of metaphors, but it's it's true. It's truth, and I know you probably experienced it yourself, and your viewers have probably experienced it at some level in their lives as well.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jeremy. There's a question I also want to ask you. How can you use storytelling to bring about joy in a sad world?
So all of us tell ourselves some kind of story, and it's based on how we were raised. It was based on our things that have happened to us. It's based on a lot of different things. So my grandmother was a part of the Great Depression here in the United States. She was of that age, in the 30s and in the 20s and 30s, where there wasn't a whole lot. And so her whole story was about save money, keep it, hold it tight, because you never know when something's going to fall apart and we won't have anything. We won't even have potatoes to make potatoes with. And so my mother was raised by her. And so my mother carried a lot of those same stories in her head. So storytelling is about the story that we talk about in our brain and our mind and our soul. And so, and that is resistance. So I want everybody, if they're watching, I want everybody to put their hands up like this, like they're pushing against a wall, and you're going to feel all this resistance in your arms and your hands and everything in your body. But if you drop your hands down and allow it in, you're going to feel a difference in the energy in your body. So what's happened is our stories have been teaching us to do this, to not receive. And well, there's a universal truth that says in order to receive, we have to do what? We have to ask. And so we don't do a lot of asking in our lives. And what do we ask? We have to ask our loved ones, our friends. We have to ask a higher power. That's the one we really need to be asking, God. And so in order to receive, we have to ask. And so what happens in our story, though, is we've been taught not to ask because we've been taught it's selfish. And the truth is that if we ask for our divine plan to be manifest, then what we're doing is we're aligning with our soul and our higher purpose. And so what happens in story, I call my business storytelling alchemy for a reason, because our story that prevents us from being connected to our divine plan, our soul, is and whatever story that we built in our mind about limitation, whether I'm not attractive enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not valued enough, or I don't have enough of this in order to be able to do this. Change that. Now the circumstances around us are true, but change the inner world, the inner story that says, no, I deserve the best of everything, except I want it divinely given. And so when we say that, I want to trust, I deserve the best of everything, but I want it divinely given. When we change our story to that, and then we work on the stories that block us from that. In other words, we heal those, let them go, and transmute them into our divine purpose. When we do that, then we'll alchemize ourselves and our thoughts from lead, heaviness, to gold, openness, and divineness. And so that's why I named my business the Storytelling Alchemist, because my job in my own life has been to change my own inner story. And I'm a recovering drug addict, and so I changed my story by the reasons why I was doing those things, because I was trying to avoid joy, as you stated in the show. So, and I was wallowing in my own self-misery. So how do I change that? I change it by alchemizing those shots, by changing this inner story that I was telling myself. And then you start to really see a significant difference in your life. And so that's what we've been talking about for the last 25, 27 minutes, is changing the inner story that aligns with your divine purpose. And if you do that, there's a force within you, because we were made in the image of God, that is powerful enough to actually make action and create change in this world, and create change in your own life and bring joy into your life. You were not born and created to feel misery. That's counterproductive. And so if you were created to manifest the glory of God that is within you. And so if you manifest that, and it comes from you, from your authentic self, because you've changed that story that oppresses that, then we've alchemized ourselves into that golden state of mind. And so that's and it takes work. It takes meditation and prayer, and facing our pains in the world, facing our hardships in the world, because a lot of times we want to avoid them. Don't avoid them. Face them head on, and face them head on, and work on the inner world and the internal reactions. And when you do that, you're going to see some significant, amazing things in your life. So lots of cool stuff. But I just want to say much love to everybody, because there's just the love comes within us. And there's always going to be something that you're going to come into a room and you're going to shine light. And I'm going to tell you, there's an old saying I was given by a guy named Bede Rose in the Navajo reservation in Arizona, and he said, Jer, when the lights come on, darkness has to recede. So when the lights come on, like even a candle light, the darkness has to recede from the candlelight. So that's something that always know that. So.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Thank you for holding on. Thank you so much for the wonderful message you've shared with us today. We really appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. And thanks for having me.
Okay. Now, as we begin to wrap up the program, what are some of the ways that you um, treat yourself apart from the service, apart from the other things that you do? Sometimes when you just want to feel good about yourself, what are some of the things that you do? Simple things that you do.
I have this beautiful balcony that looks out over a river, and I just go out there and sit sometimes with my cup of coffee and I just relax because it's
Did you
a
hear my question?
yeah. What do I do to for myself? Are you asking the simple things? Yes, I heard you. Can you hear me? Are you still there? Well, anyways, things I do to help myself and bring joy to simple things. I just basically I meditate every day, which is very simple for me, and then I relax. I walk in nature a lot. I go out to the park. Um, and I'll sit on my balcony, like I was mentioning. I'll just sit there and just enjoy that. And I like to play video games, and I read. I like to read a lot. So and be with my friends. So there's just those are very simple things. We don't have to do major things. I also love to travel. Well, traveling can be expensive, so sometimes I just go on short little day trips somewhere here locally. It doesn't always have to be such a huge grandiose thing, but like I was saying earlier, action creates momentum and movement creates action in the world. So what do? You get out there. If you want to start traveling and you start doing small day trips that are inexpensive, maybe to the beach, maybe something's you know culturally there. There's a little chapel here close by within a couple miles of my house called the Shrine of St. Michael. I love to go there. There's also Indian mounds here in Florida, Native American mounds here in Florida, so I'll go to those, and they're 20-minute drives. It doesn't have to be all grandiose, but what it does is just those things of because it's the learning about new cultures and about feeling the energy of the area is what excites me. And so what that has done, because many years ago I couldn't afford to fly places or go on trips. And so I would just go to local areas. And what that did is it started to create the intention of what I wanted to do. And I would even pack a bag like I was going somewhere, maybe just a little messenger bag with a lunch and different things in it. But what it did is it created that intention of travel. And I was saying to God, hey, this is something I want to do. The same to the universe, this is something I want to do. And I'm actually going to start taking action towards it. And that's one of those things that if we want to continue to um, have that in our life, if we want to, do those small things for ourselves, do small things. Small things build into big things. And so if we want more peace in our life, we find peace in our life. If we want to have more love in our life, we give love, and we start with ourselves. So and you'll start to see a significant difference. So, but those are things that I do for myself. Oh, well, I want to just put that. I want to maybe we'll put some challenges out there for some homework for everybody. So, so those are some things I do, small things I do for myself. I'll put it out there to everybody that's watching. I want you guys to come up with small things that bring joy to you, and start doing those on a daily basis. It could be the smallest little thing. To take time for yourself. I know people that work, 12, 13 hours a day as a nurse or in the medical field. And so one of the things that they do is they'll take some time every day for themselves and just drink a glass of wine for, 30 minutes, and they'll just sit there and relax. Doesn't have to be big, small things. And like I said earlier, small things equal up to big things eventually. And movement creates action, and action creates movement in this world. And so, but it takes, if you need time for yourself or do small things for yourself, then start doing it. Make a commitment to yourself every day to do something for you. It could be going to the gym or taking a jog or a walk, whatever it is, find it and then do it. So it's good stuff though, right? I think we have some connection issues here. Well, I'm not sure what happened to Prince. Hopefully we'll be back on here in a second. But definitely some good content here, and I hope everybody is having a joyful day. And there's some things that we've talked about here that I want to just recap on, and we'll just throw them out there. We've talked about being of service. We've talked about action. We talked about having compassion in the world. And we've talked about doing things for yourself, and that it all starts with you anyway. So if you want to see change in the world, it has to start changing with you. And there's an old saying that that was said years ago. I believe it was Gandhi that said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And so So right there starts with you. Be the change you want to see.